Hello, Yuvi and Mike. It's really a great pleasure for me to meet you here in your house, especially. Could you briefly introduce about yourselves?
I'm Mike Gilliland. This is Yuvi Avinova. We have a podcast together, which is also becoming a platform where we're kind of introducing future thinkers to connect. And the podcast has been around since 2013. It's just the two of us usually, but we also do interviews with future thinkers. And the subjects that we talk about are consciousness, technology, and society, and the evolution of those things.
And we also do courses on the subject. We're starting an online community and have plans to do in-person events as well.
Before proceeding with more questions for you, I want to add a comment from my part about how I heard about you, how I knew about what you're doing, and what made me come over here to meet you. So it was about 6 months ago. I was playing with my podcast app, and I was playing with some keywords, maybe future of humanity, humanity philosophy of technology, evolution, and I saw your podcast. It's FTP, right? So that was like a catching title, and I played some episodes from the very first one, and not only did they get me really intrigued about what you talk about and what you care about, but I was really intrigued about you and how you come to this place to make efforts to produce this kind of contents for everyone out there. So then I went to your homepage, I read about your story on your About page, and there are some topics that really I could identify myself with. At the moment I was traveling, and I know you traveled a lot too, and you were talking about these topics that I've been for a long time was also curious about. And lastly, you were actually making constant, a specific effort on what you think is meaningful for your life. So that was really inspiring. And right there, then I took a note on my itinerary to consider visiting you. So that was just a brief introduction from my end. Do you remember when the idea first come out? I guess it was in a conversation between two of you.
I can kind of tell the story of how it came together, but it steps back a little further into the past, around the time that we first met. We were both working in the media industry. UV was an extra working on movie sets, and I was doing lighting, and I was recording bands, kind of a music producer thing. And both of us wanted to travel, and that was basically a motivation to start an online business so that we could earn income and then travel the world. And so we did that. We started a website design business together and got a couple of our first clients, and then bought one-way tickets to Thailand, took off. And at that point, we had been listening to a lot of podcasts, and we met up with the host of the Tropical MBA podcast in Thailand, or in Vietnam, one of the countries there. And so we had this kind of experience that you're having right now of like listening to people for years and years, and then suddenly meeting them in person and having, real conversations with them. So they actually were the ones that inspired us to just start recording the average conversations that we were having.
Mm-hmm. The difference was that a lot of people in that group of friends had podcasts, but they were business podcasts. And we thought, well, we have really interesting conversations every morning over coffee, so why don't we just record those? Because we were always talking about philosophy and consciousness and how humanity is evolving and all of these different kind of cross-pollinating subjects. And we just started recording those, and then we started inviting guests, and it evolved from there.
Yeah. A big thing that allowed this whole thing to come together was the fact that we were working online, getting some clients, trying to make our business passive to a degree so that we could get a little bit more time back, because we lived in Vancouver. It was really expensive to live, and suddenly we're in Thailand where the cost of living was nearly a tenth of what it was before. And suddenly we had the option of either continue working as much as we are and earn more and just have a lot of excess income, or do what we would want to do with our lifestyle, and work less. And we chose that option, and we ended up reading a lot of books and just having more conversations. And I think the book reading just really increased at that point. So we just followed our interests, and that's really where the inspiration came from. A lot of books on consciousness and society and technology and that sort of thing.
I think another big part of it was that we just had more time for contemplation.
Yeah.
And unplugging, because when you're stuck in your daily routines, you don't even question why things are the way they are, why you have certain thought patterns or ideas about how the world works or habits. And then, first of all, when you're separated from the culture that you were previously embedded in, and now you also have time to think about things and contemplate and kind of turn that attention inward, a lot of things kind of started unraveling in a good way. It was also challenging because, of course, there's a lot of self-reflection that comes with that, and you realize how wrong you were about a lot of things or how unhealthy certain patterns were, both in terms of habits or in terms of thinking. And just many years of that produced a lot of changes for both of us.
I forget about describing that part when we have conversations about how this all started, because a lot of it did come from this, having the time, but then doing the work where we were naturally pulled, which is a lot of it was deconstruction of reality and of mind, and trying to understand the way our own minds work and conversing about that with each other, because we're both equally passionate about it. So just trying to figure out, like, what is the meaning of life, and why are we here, and what is this weird consciousness thing that we're experiencing. And a lot of that territory has already been covered in a lot of books and traditions and in some religions as well. So that was kind of an unfolding as well, to be able to find the territory that had already been covered and get as far as we could with that, and then do our own exploration after that.
So how many years have passed since you shared the first recording of your conversation?
The first one was recorded in a bungalow in Thailand in 2013.
In December of 2013.
Yeah. Do you remember what you talked about?
Yeah, it was about the crossover of technology and consciousness.
As I understand, now you are doing this full time, but along the journey, I guess you have been defining your business model, because to do something full time, you need to have a sustainable financial flow. So how that has been so far. Basically, the financial uncertainty is what I'm curious about.
I like to say that I have a graveyard full of dead businesses. And I mean, any entrepreneur, I guess, has the same thing, but we've just tried so many different things. Future Thinkers has always been the consistent passion that we've been working on, but then we've done marketing and video production and podcast production for other people. We've been hired that way. So it's been challenging and up and down. And when we finally made the switch to do Future Thinkers full time, it seemed like, in some ways, like all of reality, all of the universe was just pushing us to make that decision.
Yeah.
Anytime we tried something else, it seemed to not work. But Future Thinkers was always this thing that was just steadily growing and working. So once we started focusing on how to monetize that, a lot of things kind of clicked.
Yeah.
And so the first way we monetized it was through sponsorships, and then we also kind of kept doing some of the marketing work. So we would say, hey, look, we'll make your explainer video, we'll help you make some content, and then you can sponsor our podcast. And that all worked together to begin to monetize it. And now we're making courses and selling those.
I'd like to ask about your partnership. So you just mentioned that when you were living in Southeast Asia, you had actually a lot of time to contemplate on things, I guess with Mike then. I would want to also point out that you seem to have had great luck in that you met each other, because I think it makes a lot of difference when you have some like-minded partner to discuss the topic. In general, how do you find each other as a partner, as a co-producer?
You say we were lucky, and maybe there was some aspect of luck, but having been on the other side of the fence and actually being in the nitty-gritty of doing it, it's been a lot of conscious effort and a lot of work. We didn't always work together well. It has taken many years for sure, because we have different personalities, we have different sort of ideas about how things should be done, we have different opinions on subjects. So it's been a practice, definitely, to learn how do we combine our skills and work styles, how do we adapt to each other, how do we work effectively together, and also being willing to evolve. You know, if you see that you're doing something that is not helpful or useful for the partnership as a whole, being willing to change.
For me, I've always had a deep intention in anything I've, decided to do. And before I met UV, I had always had it in my head that I wanted to have this kind of lifestyle of freedom, independence, sovereignty over my life. And in imagining that kind of lifestyle, I imagined a partner that would also share that drive and that desire for the same thing. So in my mind, it had always worked that I would try and meet someone that wanted the same thing, would want to work with me, would want to build something unique and interesting together. And so we both met on OkCupid. And I don't know if they're really doing much anymore compared to Tinder, but back then there was a lot more emphasis on the profile and the matching algorithm. So at the time, I was putting a lot more focus into a person that would kind of meet those specific guidelines or specifications. And it ended up working out really well, because I kind of had whittled it down in my own mind to what kind of person would work the best to do this kind of life with. And I tried to cut away at all the fluff and unimportant things and find out what the most important thing is. And it has been, and I've said this many, many times over the years, a willingness to grow and change and face your own, face what you lack and actually work on yourself. And so when we went on our first date together, I recognized that right away.
Yeah, it's very similar for me, just the willingness to grow and change and adapt. Yeah. Because there's so many people who just stagnate and are comfortable with that.
Or that believe something that
are attached to their ideas about the world.
The way they were raised, sort of cultural conditioning, the way the rules their parents laid down. And a person who would never question those things and never seek to uncover the truth for themselves would never have been compatible for either of us. Either partner wouldn't have been okay with that. So in some sense, we do face a lot of extra pain, because in some ways we don't learn from other people's mistakes. We want to make our own mistakes. So that's been a bit of an issue for us. But yeah, I would say you say it's luck, and a lot of people do say that, but it's been deep intention and hard work.
Yes. Yeah.
Is what it really has been.
And aside what you already said, I've always visualized having a partner who is as curious and as intellectual, yet open-minded as me, and who would be willing to just explore any subject, no holds barred. And I'd met some people who met some portion of that criteria, but never somebody who met all of that criteria. And then I met Mike, and I was like, oh, wow, you're like that, but actually you're not the way that I imagined you would be, because Mike didn't decorate himself very much. A lot of people who are kind of open-minded or weird, they'll decorate themselves a lot. And Mike wasn't like that at all. I was like, you're weird. You're interesting.
Seems like that worked for your favor, Mike.
Yeah. No brand names. That's my advice. No brand names.
But you have a very trendy bun.
Man bun. I don't know how this happened.
Influence.
Yeah. She's shaping me now into her ideal person.
I was wondering about it actually.
So can you share with me one of the most hardest challenges that you remember and one of the most exciting moments?
It's always been money, I think, has always been the challenging part.
Yeah, it's always been this push and pull between doing what we're here to do, what is most meaningful, and doing something that will make us money. Yeah, we've definitely, like Mike said, we've started a lot of businesses just, from thinking that something is going to be profitable, but not necessarily meaningful, and it always failed.
Yeah, wasting, 6 months at a time.
On each thing, so, many years altogether.
Yeah.
So that explains both the most challenging part and the most exciting part.
Yes, when something that is so deeply meaningful to us actually works, even if it works slowly, but it works, it's incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah.
So where do you get your energy, like the essential energy that makes you go forward in life? For me, that's fear. That's my own fear of death. And I think I realized that when I was 8 years old, when I was really shocked, when I learned about that concept, that there's going to be no me, so that there's no fear. Like, how can I explain this? How can I possibly integrate into my knowledge system? Because there's not going to be me, and that's the end. So that keeps me going, that fuels me to choose a path that I'm really interested in. So what was helping you to go forward?
For me, it was meaning. I had just an internal guidance system that pointed out to me what is the most meaningful, what I'm here to do, what feels like, might sound a bit esoteric, but just when everything is aligned internally, it feels like I'm channeling something. I don't know how to describe it any other way, like nature is speaking through me, like it's something bigger than me when I'm doing certain things.
So you get surreal experience sometimes?
Yeah. So, and with time, as I've tuned into those things more, it's become more clear what they are. It's less, at first it was a bit vague, and Mike can speak to this as well, that the things that I found meaningful or wanted to go towards were kind of vague. And now they're more defined. And I think that as they've become more defined for me, they have started manifesting in our lives more. That's something that Mike can also speak to, I'm sure.
There's so many things I could say right now about this question, but if you're at all familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality types, we're very kind of archetypically fitting our molds of our Myers-Briggs personality profiles. I'm an INTJ, Yuvi's an ENFP, and I looked up memes of those two pairings together on Google image search, and I found one where an INTJ and an ENFP meet, and the ENFP is just puking out rainbows, just like vomiting a stream of rainbows, and it's just going everywhere. It's just a mess. And the INTJ just kind of thinks for a second, goes away, comes back, plops a machine on her head and focuses the rainbow like a laser, and then starts pointing the laser at So in some ways, like, our relationship has kind of been like that. Like, it's been I provide a lot of focus and clarity,
systems,
and Yuvi provides a lot of energy and kind of emotional energy. To me, I mean, she talks about like this channeling and this emotional energy, and for me, it's like I feel what you're saying about death. And I've had a lot of experience with friends and people close to me passing away, and I've asked myself that question many times: what is worth doing? If I'm going to die anyway, if I look back at my life, what is going to be worth doing? So I get some ideas in my head about what I want to do, and I just take this attitude of, fuck it, let's do it. But Yuvi comes in with this sort of strong emotional desire to affect people, and for me, in a lot of cases, like I don't care about status. I don't care about bragging to people back home. As far as I'm concerned, I could disappear into a monastery for the rest of my life, never to be heard from again, or go live in a cave. You know, I might be some mad scientist making machines in a cave somewhere, like an evil villain, but I would be completely fine with that. But Yuvi comes in and brings this sort of energy that I like to try and focus into different directions. So that in itself is, that pairing has worked quite well for us. But as far as facing fear, that I think what you said is very key. Like, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Do something worthwhile.
What do your parents think about what you do?
My dad, your family is kind of funny about it too, but my dad, he says he gets it. Like, he would have done the same thing if he could have. We both had aspirations for music. He had a family. I discovered that the music industry doesn't pay very well or let me travel or do a lot of different things, so I kind of opted out of that as well. But I mean, I don't know that he exactly, or my family exactly knows how we make money, but I think they get that this is something cool that's worth doing. Yeah, they don't really, they never tell me to get realistic or to stop or.
Do they listen?
Do they listen? Not really. No.
Yeah.
They're not curious about it, I should say. They never ask questions about it.
Do you feel sad about it sometimes? That this question, what you think is so critical, and you brought this amazing guest and we talked about this, and you want your close people to just have a look into it. Have you felt that way?
I used to, quite a lot. I used to think like, why don't you ever ask me questions about it, or
Or you used to try to convert people?
Yeah, I did. I used to, you know, because we both experienced such freedom suddenly. I mean, family is family. You're going to keep in touch with them, but I do notice that there's a big disconnect there. But it's funny when friends back home will randomly encounter our podcast online just from their own searches and just recognize my name or something. That's always funny. They send an email or something.
And how about your parents and family?
My parents are even less keen than my experience. My mom still tries to convince me to get a PhD and go into academia.
Your dad is funny though.
And my dad, yeah, he at least has stopped criticizing my life, but that's about it.
Yeah.
He just shuts up. But
There's
he
different
doesn't approve.
attitudes towards entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about Russia, but I've talked to a lot of people in Europe who just do not think entrepreneurship is cool at all. And I think it's the same with your dad. Like, go to university, get a good job, get a pension, you know, all of that. So I think he doesn't get it.
Yeah, he doesn't get it, and he still hopes that I'll just get a normal job. He's very conservative. Both of my parents are very conservative. I mean,
We can say that we already dealt with this already, but I want you to hear again. What kind of life do you want to live?
I want to live life to the fullest. I want to do things that are meaningful regardless of what society thinks of them, regardless of what kind of status it creates or lack of status.
I want to be able to just create anything that comes to mind. I want to be, you know, all my random inspiration to work on something or create something or build something. I want to be able to just put that together immediately.
Yeah.
So that's already been reflected in the way the skills I've chosen to learn. If I have an idea for a graphic, I've become proficient in Photoshop. If I want to make an animation, I've become proficient in After Effects. If I want to make a video, I mean, all of these different skills for all the things I could possibly want to do, I've just spent the time to learn those things. So now it's really about like the resources and the means to put together large scale projects. So that's what I want to work on next, is just to make everything accessible for me to create and co-create with other people. Yeah.
So you're a creator.
Yeah, for sure.
Both of us are.
Yeah.
Thanks for the conversation. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for having done what you did.
Thank you.